So for all of you chair yoga teachers out there, if you want to put a little fun, a little spice, a little sweetness in your classes, I guarantee you chair yoga dance is the way to go. It's accessible to everybody. My wheelchair yogis just love it. And it's just the most fun and wonderful experience I've ever had as a yoga teacher. And I hope you enjoy it just as much as I do. I'm going to share my love and passion for it, and I think you're going to get just as excited as I am. Hi, chair yoga teachers. This is Sherry with a personal invite to you to join me on the new upcoming chair yoga dance certification. Now, why am I doing the certification program? Well, I think all of you know by now that I'm loving this chair yoga dance. And thank you so much, Olga Danilovich in Toronto, for really instilling that passion for this chair yoga dance in me, that I can share such joy with all of my students and with you, fellow teachers, as well. So here's what the program is going to entail. I'm going to take you from ground zero to a full-on chair yoga dance, and maybe even a full chair yoga dance class, where we bundle in lots of chair yoga dance in an hour or even a 30-minute time frame. So here's what we'll be covering in the training program. First and foremost, song selection. The most important thing. It's got to be something that touches you personally, right? Maybe it's an artist that you like. Maybe it's an inspirational lyrics that you like. Maybe it's that tempo and that beat or that fun. Anything that really speaks to you as the teacher. As you know, I have quite a few collections of chair yoga dances by now that I'll be teaching you throughout this course. But my hope, my desire, is that you will learn the methodology of creating these and teaching them, which is a whole different experience than just creating them, so that you can go and create your own and then share the bountifulness to your students of maybe my dances, your dances, and other teachers' dances. My idea is to create a library of chair yoga dances from all of the teachers so that we have inspiration from so many different genres and lifestyles and artists. I think it's going to be an amazing time. I hope you join me. So let's get to a little bit of the nitty-gritty of what is in the course. We talked a little bit about song selection. Very important. That's the fundamental start. The next thing is movement selection. What movements do you do to the song? It's really an important thing for you to sit down with the song, make sure that it's speaking to you. You know this is the song for the dance that you want, and start to think about the movements, right? Start to think shoulder movements, hand movement, foot movements, back movements. All of those, the same concepts that you got in the chair yoga training program, we blend those right into the chair yoga dance program. We try not to overuse a body part too much because that will get tiresome, and hopefully we don't want to cause anybody any harm or injury, of course. So movement selection is very, very important. Do you want it to be a standing dance or a seated dance? I started with seated dances, but guess what? Standing, oh my gosh, that opens up a whole nother world. Agility, balance, coordination, rhythm, of course, right? So I'm building a larger repertoire now of standing dances. The lyric structure of a song. It's great. You just Google a song, say the lyrics, and you've got this great printout of what the lyrics are. You see the chorus, you see the verses, you see the repeats, and then you start to structure your dance according to the lyrics of the song. So the very first thing I do is print out the song lyrics, and I start to go over where the patterns are, right? So think about a pattern. A chorus is a pattern, isn't it? It repeats. That means your movement of that chorus usually is a repetitive movement. Then we'll talk a little bit about patterns in themselves within the dance, right? We don't want to have so many different patterns that the student's going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of this, right? So what I try to offer is patterns and movements that are progressive, right? So they build upon each other. Maybe we start with one foot out, one hand and one foot out, both hands out with that one foot, and on and on. So those are more progressive movements, right? Progressive movements are a way we build confidence in our students to maybe take one extra little step and make it a little bit more challenging for them. If they don't have good balance, if their coordination or just the movements seem a little bit out of their range, then they stay with the initial sequence that you offered them. So that's why progressive movements are very important in chair yoga dance. And also just repetitive patterns. It doesn't always have to be progressive. Most of the time the choruses are repetitive patterns, and they usually happen 2 or 3 times in a song. So that means we look at the verses. The verses where we get to be super creative, right? I also look at the lyrics. Like, are there words in there that we can mimic using certain motions, right? There's a lot of happy songs, so this is always my happy movement, right? There's songs like they say no and never, and we do things like this, right? So there's always kind of movements that you see that match with words that are kind of common throughout some of your songs. And then we got to practice, practice, and practice. Yes, I practice a lot. I'm going to actually show you a little bit of my practice sessions so you can see, Practice makes perfect, right? And the first time you choreograph a song, it's probably not the way, right? I have a fellow teacher that tells me she does a lot of her choreography of her dances while she's driving. I admit, I do the same. I crank up that song, I'm like sitting in traffic and I'm just kind of thinking about the moves in my head. So there's so many different ways we can practice without actually physically doing the practice. And what I notice, sometimes a song you thought was a seated song turned out to be a standing song. And that's the one I'm going to demonstrate to you shortly. So you'll see I started seating, I'm thinking, no, this is a standing song, and I'll tell you the reason why, a very important reason why, which is a safety reason. So once you've got your dance, you think you got it, you think you got your moves, now you have to teach it to the students. This is where it gets super tricky. I've seen a couple of teachbacks where student teachers have incorporated a dance in their teachback class. And they would spend almost 15, 20 minutes on the movements of the dance until you finally get to the dance. And it's like, oh my gosh, half the class, 15 minutes of the class was spent on just the dance moves. So what I try to do is to offer up the movements throughout my class that build on to where the dance steps are, right? So no one really even knows that we're going to be doing a dance that has all these movements built in. Then when I get to the chorus, which usually is a pattern again, then I'll spend a little bit more time on teaching them the chorus. So teaching the students the dance is very important in your class flow, right? You don't want to spend too much time, but you want the students to feel a little familiar that when the song cranks on, they'll be able to follow you. And then there's always a little tip that I give everybody. If you don't know the movements in a dance, then do this movement, right? So maybe Catch a Falling Star, we do a little bit of sparkles on that one, right? So if you don't know what's going on, we do little sparkles. And the one with Justin Timberlake when we go Can't Stop the Feeling, maybe it's just party, 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 right? So you kind of give them that little lighthearted approach. So don't worry if you mess it up, right? You'll just have a lot of fun dancing with us. So teaching the students how to do the movements, very important. You don't want to spend a lot of time in your class doing that. Then, once you start the dance, right, there's going to be cues that you want to give throughout the dance that allows the students to know what's coming up next. And those cues, what I discovered, those cues, you guys, important. And they are actually little code words or little short names of what the movement is, right? It could just be left arm and cactus. That's your cue, right? Crisscross, like left arm and cactus, crisscross. Clean the table, right? Clean the table. So I can say clean the table 4 times. You see, I don't have to be a big movement about what it's doing, how you're doing it. So as we're teaching the movements to the students, we're going to think about the cues and the clever names we're going to give for some of the movements that we come up with. And some of them are standard. We use them a lot. Happy, for me, happy is a big one, right? So you'll find that in your repertoire, you'll continue to use a couple of movements over and over again. Don't worry about it. Not every single song has to have a new movement. Try to be a little creative. Those of you who have graduated from my course and taken the methodologies section, you know my philosophy is 70-30. 70% familiar, 30% something new. I think about that in my dances too. So don't think that every single dance has to be completely new, completely different every single time. People like familiarity, they feel comfortable in it, they're not as intimidated by that. So keep that in mind when you structure your dances. Then I'll cover how to use dances in your class, right? Is it going to be a full chair yoga dance class? I've been experimenting with this format and I absolutely love it. Our local library has agreed to pilot a full chair yoga dance class for the next 3 months, and I'm so excited. Twice a month I'm going to be doing that. I think it's going to be a hit, but we'll see. But there is a flow to that. We don't want to have all these aerobic type cardio dances all in a row. We'll wipe out the students, right? So there is a flow and there's a rhythm to inserting the dances, whether they be 1, 2, 3, or a full class of dances in. I always think about it as an album. Back in the day, I know all of us used to buy our vinyl albums, right? We used to have an experience in that album, right? Now today it's like the hit that's on the radio and we go, oh, I love that hit. But no, an album was an experience. It started off with a certain mood, maybe it built up, then it got mellow again, maybe built up, and then maybe ended with a big, wow, 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 or a nice smooth ending. All of that comes into play when we create the choreography of our dancing, and we offer that up to our students. Again, 1, 2, a class, or maybe a full-on class. So I'll give you a little bit of a hint. The River. Many of you know that one. It was one of my first ones by Garth Brooks. I love it. The sentiment and the words are just amazing, especially for the clientele that we work with, which is people over 50 and probably people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? So that one is so special that we are now doing that, I have to say, by popular demand, every single class right before Shavasana. It just is a beautiful wind down, cool down pose, but also the lyrics, the sentiments, the heartfelt feeling that we get after that class just gets everybody in that space of just gratitude and everything being just so precious and so special and sentimental that when we get into our Shavasana, we can be there in a little bit more peaceful state. So that's what songs do. Songs do create that. They create moods, right? They create energy. They create feelings. So your repertoire would be completely different than my repertoire, but I'm glad to share every song in my repertoire with you. You never know. And guess what? Feel free to change my